In my youth, my grandfather worked for the magistrate, specializing in the execution of condemned prisoners. One day, old Mrs. Liu from next door came over, bringing 2 packets of red sugar for my grandfather. Her voice trembled as she said, "Elder Brother Wang, tomorrow, when you execute my boy, please make it swift." My grandfather didn't accept the sugar. He simply pointed to the blade resting beside him and calmly replied, "Don't worry, madam. This blade has been sharpened. I assure you, your son will find peace in his journey below." Mrs. Liu stared at the executioner's blade, then suddenly burst into tears, choking out, "My boy fears pain more than anything. With such a sharp blade, he can close his eyes in peace." She wiped away her tears, her voice growing even more sorrowful. "He's so young to lose his head. Oh, Elder Brother Wang, on whom will I rely to live from now on?" My grandfather sighed. "Mrs. Liu, I'm not blaming you, but how dare that boy offend the magistrate's daughter? Her family is noble, like gold and jade, and yet he insulted her. How could the magistrate not be enraged? Truth be told, it's already a great blessing that the magistrate didn't have you imprisoned and executed alongside him." Mrs. Liu didn't reply. She merely sobbed for a long time before collapsing to her knees before my grandfather, begging with a trembling voice, "Elder Brother Wang, tomorrow, when you execute my boy, please strike 3 inches behind his ear. That way, less blood will flow, and he will suffer less pain." My grandfather nodded gently, accepting her plea. After Mrs. Liu left, grandmother emerged from the kitchen, her face full of discontent. "Old man, Mrs. Liu asked for your help. Why didn't you accept those 2 packets of red sugar? Red sugar is good for the blood. Eating it makes it easier to bear noble sons." My grandfather took a puff from his water pipe and slowly said, "Mrs. Liu and I have been neighbors for decades. Her son committed a crime, and I have to execute him myself. How could I bear to accept anything from her? Besides, what do I need red sugar for? At your age, are you planning to have another son?" Grandmother grew angry, her face darkening. "That red sugar could be saved as a betrothal gift for Scamp's future wife. Our family would gain so much face in town then." My grandfather sneered. "Scamp isn't even 10 years old yet. Marriage is a distant matter. I think you're just greedy." Grandmother immediately turned her back and went back into the kitchen. My grandfather called after her, "Remember to steam a few more buns. Tomorrow, as soon as his head falls, quickly use the buns to catch the blood. The more blood soaked into the buns, the better. It'll cure Scamp's weakness." Grandmother huffed a few cold breaths, then shouted, "Scamp, come light the fire quickly. I'm going into the kitchen." As grandmother kneaded the dough, she muttered, "That Mrs. Liu is truly ungrateful. Your grandfather didn't take the red sugar, and she actually took it back. If it were me, I'd use a dull knife to saw at her boy's neck inch by inch, until it cracked and broke, so he'd scream to the heavens unheard and cry to the earth unanswered. That way, the whole town would be terrified. From then on, anyone who committed a crime would scramble to bring gifts to our house, and we'd never have to worry about going hungry." At this point, grandmother suddenly became fierce, yelling, "It's all your grandfather's fault. Always so concerned with his reputation, never willing to accept people's gifts." Grandmother stormed out, pointing a finger at my grandfather's face. "Old man, did you and Mrs. Liu have an affair when you were young? Is that why you wouldn't take those 2 packets of red sugar now?" My grandfather took a deep puff, coughed violently a few times, then roared, "Stop talking nonsense. Go steam the buns." "Your grandfather is an executioner. He's beheaded countless people. Many have brought him gifts, begging him for a quick, clean strike, but he's never accepted any. Grandfather always says that things from the dead cannot be accepted. If you take them, the vengeful spirits might cling to you for life." The next morning, a crowd had gathered at the market gate. Mrs. Liu's son was tightly bound with ropes, kneeling on the execution platform. His face was pale, his entire body trembling. He kept craning his neck towards my grandfather, crying out, "Uncle, I'm so afraid of pain. Please, uncle, make it quick." My grandfather, dressed in his red robes, nodded softly. "Go peacefully. Uncle won't let you suffer too much." Around them, some people laughed raucously, mocking him. "Hey, boy, you tasted the magistrate's daughter, didn't you? How was it? I heard that magistrate came from the capital, and his daughter even met the Empress Dowager. So you indirectly touched someone who met the Empress Dowager. Isn't that glorious? What does the Empress Dowager look like? Does she eat white steamed buns every day? Eating steamed buns isn't enough, it should be accompanied by Luo River delicacies." The sun slowly climbed higher, its blinding rays shining down. My grandmother clutched 2 white steamed buns, her eyes fixed on the condemned man's neck. As soon as my grandfather swung his blade and the head separated from the body, she would immediately rush onto the platform, using the buns to catch the gushing hot blood. Blood-soaked buns were precious. Eating them was said to make all illnesses vanish. I had been frail since childhood, gasping for breath after just a few steps. People said I had small guts, meaning I was timid or weak and needed to eat blood buns to become stronger. Indeed, every time I ate one, my whole body felt warm and energy surged through me endlessly. On the execution ground, an officer shouted, "It's time!" My grandfather tilted his head back, chugged a mouthful of wine, then drew the blade he had carried for decades. Under the sunlight, the blade glinted with a cold, chilling light. Mrs. Liu's son was so terrified he went limp, swaying weakly. Mrs. Liu rushed to the edge of the platform, crying and screaming, "My son, don't be afraid. Your mother will take you home soon." My grandfather softly called out, "Go peacefully." He sprayed a mouthful of wine onto the blade, then abruptly pulled the condemned man upright by his shoulder. Just as he knelt straight, the blade swept down his neck. My grandfather had practiced his trade for a long time, his swordsmanship was precise. With one stroke, the head rolled onto the platform, and hot blood gushed out like a fountain. I stood closest and was splashed directly on the face, so red I couldn't open my eyes. Around me, people screamed like madmen, jostling and scrambling forward, steamed buns in hand, eager to catch the fresh blood. Blood buns were a miracle cure, coveted by all. Mrs. Liu also rushed forward, clutching her son's head, frantically wrapping a white cloth around his severed neck. My grandfather roared, "Mrs. Liu, what are you doing?" She didn't answer, only trembling as she tied it quickly. A glance showed that indeed less blood was flowing. The crowd grew angry. "What are you blocking for? I'm still waiting for blood to treat my sickness." Mrs. Liu, still wrapping the cloth, knelt and cried, "He's my only son. Please have mercy and let him be whole." Her scolding made people's faces red. Someone shouted loudly, "I left my farm work to wait for blood buns. Now you're blocking it. What kind of decency is this? It's customary in this town that when a criminal is beheaded for a serious crime, the disposal of the body is the people's right." Someone else echoed, "Exactly, Mrs. Liu, you're not being fair at all." Just the other day, when old Chen dared to sneak into a young lady's courtyard and was beheaded, you were the first to rush forward and claim the blood. The crowd shoved and pushed, wanting to claim the head to handle it according to custom. Mrs. Liu panicked, banging her head on the ground, begging, "Please have mercy on my son." But she was a lonely widow. No one listened. In the chaos, my grandmother secretly stuffed a steamed bun into the severed neck, forcefully soaking up the blood. The bun quickly turned red. Seeing this, others also fiercely rushed forward, jostling to grab it. Mrs. Liu wailed again, crying out, "Elder Brother Wang, please help me stop them." My grandfather roared, "Mrs. Liu only has one son. You've all collected enough blood. Don't be excessive." My grandfather was the only executioner in town. His words carried weight. As soon as he spoke, the crowd immediately backed away, daring not to overstep. When the people had dispersed, Mrs. Liu tremblingly untied the white cloth, then wrapped it tightly around her son's neck, circle after circle. As she wrapped, she sobbed and whispered, "My good child, don't be afraid. Your mother is taking you home now." My grandfather, wiping his blade with a red cloth, said in a low voice, "Mrs. Liu, this might not be good. Your son died young, and those who die young must be buried before sunset, or they will bring great calamity." Mrs. Liu paid no attention. She merely lowered her head and quietly pulled her son's corpse onto a donkey cart. My grandfather frowned. "Mrs. Liu, are you taking the corpse home? You can't do that." Before he could finish, grandmother cut him off. "Old man, that's her own flesh and blood. Let her do as she pleases with it. Why worry so much?" My grandfather sighed. "Those who die young and are not buried promptly will surely cause trouble sooner or later." At that moment, I was eating a hot steamed bun and innocently asked, "Grandfather, what kind of trouble will happen?" My grandfather stroked my head and answered curtly, "Don't ask too many questions, child." As the bun slid down my throat, I felt my body grow stronger and I eagerly said, "Grandmother, I want more." Grandmother glared at my grandfather, her voice full of resentment. "There's none left for you." Your grandfather has no sense of worry. He won't accept people's gifts, yet he executes them neatly so they can rest in peace. After wiping his blade, grandfather quietly returned home. Once there, he sat down and began sharpening his blade, stroke after stroke echoing melodically in the night. By then, my vigor was abundant, so I ran to the house next door to find Chillify, the daughter of Ms. Lee who sold tofu. From the kitchen, grandmother called after me, "Scamp, remember to ask for some tofu. I'll make soup tonight." I shouted, "Yes." When I arrived, I saw Chillify grinding soybeans in the yard. Her mother had been gravely ill for a long time. I pulled a steamed bun from my shirt and gave it to her. "This is from the execution ground. Grandmother brought it back. Give it to your mother to eat." Chillify was moved to tears. "Brother Scamp, you are so kind to me. Later, I'll grind some more and press out some special tofu water just for you to drink." I followed her inside. As I stepped in, a foul, bloody stench immediately assailed my nostrils. Chillify softly called, "Mother, mother, are you awake yet?" Brother Scamp brought a steamed bun. But on the bed, her mother lay motionless. Chillify trembled and gently nudged her. "Mother, mother, wake up!" But there was no reaction. I felt a slight unease. I looked closer, and my face immediately drained of blood. My legs trembled uncontrollably. Chillify's mother was dead. Her neck was wrapped in bundles of black thread, but the stitches were loose. Just as Chillify nudged her, the head separated from her body. Chillify threw herself onto the body, wailing pitifully. "Mother, why did your neck break like this?" It was the second time I had witnessed a head separated from a body, but it was completely different from when Mrs. Liu's son was executed. Then, blood had gushed out like a fountain. Now, even with her head severed, not a single drop of blood flowed from Chillify's mother. She was stiff and cold, looking no different from a rabbit frozen to death in winter. Chillify cried out, "Mother, wake up, please wake up." Even though she had stopped breathing, her eyes were wide open, their gaze seeming to pierce through me. I was terrified and immediately turned and ran home. Grandmother was waiting at the door, asking at once, "Where's the tofu?" I gasped for breath. "I couldn't get any." "Grandmother, Chillify's mother is dead." Grandmother pouted her lips, humming coldly. "I knew she wouldn't live long. Instead of remaining chaste, she sold tofu to seduce men, died of a dirty disease, serves her right." I shook my head vigorously. "No, it's not that. Her neck was severed by someone." My grandfather emerged from the house, asking, "Scamp, what did you just say?" I repeated it once more. My grandfather's face turned grim. He immediately strode towards Chillify's house. Grandmother tried to stop him. "Someone's dead. The authorities will surely investigate. Why are you running over there? It won't be good if you get involved." My grandfather roared, "Foolish woman, what do you know? Our town has few residents, and the mother and daughter never made enemies." "Why would her neck suddenly be severed?" Grandmother huffed. "HMPH, probably killed by some lover." My grandfather glared at grandmother, his voice icy cold. "It was Mrs. Liu's son who did it." Grandmother was stunned for a long time before she spoke. "He was beheaded. How can he still harm people? Are you trying to scare me?" My grandfather said in a serious tone, "I told you, those who die young and are brought home will generate resentment. If they don't descend to the underworld, they will turn into vengeful ghosts to harm people." My grandfather stomped his foot and gritted his teeth. "I must go check on Chillify's mother." I trailed behind him. Chillify's house was empty and silent, only her mother's corpse lay motionless on the bed. My grandfather pulled back the blanket and saw the entire bed was covered in blood, dripping like water from his hands. I trembled as I asked my grandfather, "Besides you, who else in town would dare to cut off someone's head?" My grandfather didn't answer. He just pressed his hand onto the dead woman's neck. The neck was indented and uneven, not like it was cut by a knife, but as if sharp teeth had bitten through it. My grandfather said in a low voice, "This was bitten by Mrs. Liu's son." He looked around the house then asked, "Where is Chillify?" I was confused too. I saw her here when I left. My grandfather's face immediately turned ashen. "Something is wrong. Chillify might be in danger." My grandfather sternly told me, "Scamp, go home immediately." When we got home, my grandfather took out his ghost head blade. Grandmother asked, "Late at night like this, where are you going with that blade?" My grandfather said, "To Mrs. Liu's house. Her son has turned into a monster. I must chop him into pieces." Grandmother tried to stop him. "Going to Mrs. Liu's house at this hour? I think you're not trying to kill her son, but rather trying to flatter her." My grandfather stomped his foot in anger. "What do you know? Her son died and wasn't buried. She must be trying to make him a zombie." "A zombie?" Grandmother staggered. "To nurture a zombie, one must use human blood. Is she crazy?" My grandfather said coldly, "Not just blood, but blood flowing from the throat of the living is needed." My grandfather shouldered his blade and strode out. Grandmother frantically called out, "Can you handle a zombie, or should I report to the authorities tomorrow morning?" My grandfather shook his head. "Mrs. Liu is our next-door neighbor. Tonight she killed Kuahua's mother. It will soon be our turn. I must act before her son fully transforms into a monster. I must shatter him with the ghost head blade." That night, grandmother held me in her inner room to sleep. Grandmother locked the door tightly, making sure no one could push it open from the outside. But I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep, my mind filled with thoughts of Kuahua. Mrs. Liu wanted to nurture a zombie with the blood of the living. So, would she make Kuahua bite through her own throat to feed her son? The more I thought, the more my heart pounded erratically. I didn't want anything to happen to Kuahua. Suddenly outside, there was a frantic knocking at the door. I looked at grandmother, who was sleeping like a log, completely oblivious. The knocking continued in a rhythmic beat, like a drum demanding a life, echoing endlessly. I gathered all my courage and softly asked, "Who's there?" From outside, a hoarse voice replied, "It's me, Kuahua." I immediately sprang up, quietly crept to the door, and opened it. Kuahua stood there, completely soaked, her body stiff, her movements jerky, her arms and legs moving almost simultaneously. I asked, "Where did you go? Why couldn't I find you earlier?" Kuahua replied in a slow, hesitant voice, "My mother is alive again. She wants to eat steamed buns. Can you give me 2 more?" I was stunned, a chill running down my spine. "Don't lie to me. Your mother's neck was bitten through. How can she be alive?" Little Kuahua lifted her head, her dark eyes staring at me. She spoke each word distinctly. A bald, scarred monk came. He put medicine on my mother's neck, and then my mother came back to life. I shook my head. "I don't believe it. If you don't believe me, I'll take you to see." Little Kuahua pulled my hand towards the door. Her hand was both cold and wet, making me very uncomfortable. She said again, "Brother Scamp, my family just ground a lot of tofu. Will you come home with me to drink some tofu water?" I was a little swayed. I had eaten 2 big steamed buns today, and my stomach felt like fire burning all the way up to my throat. I really wanted some cold tofu water to soothe it. I quietly took 2 steamed buns and followed Kuahua straight back to her house. I asked Kuahua, "Your mother is dead. Where did you run off to?" Kuahua paused for a moment. I just kept crying and crying. Then a bald monk came from outside. He said he could save my mother, so I followed him out. He went straight up the back mountain, and I followed him up there. In the mountains, the monk told me to pick herbs, saying, "Put this medicine on your mother's neck, and she will come back to life." As she said this, Kuahua's eyes lit up. And sure enough, my mother came back to life. She also said she wanted to eat steamed buns. I clutched the 2 steamed buns in my hand, thinking that I definitely had to drink my fill of tofu water later and also bring back a few pieces of tofu. Otherwise, if grandmother found out, she would surely scold me. Inside the house, Kuahua's mother had indeed come back to life, but a thick, jet-black patch of medicine covered her neck, looking terrifying and grotesque. "Scamp, come here quickly." Kuahua's mother patted the edge of the bed, her eyes fixed on the steamed buns in my hand. "Quickly give me the steamed buns in your hand to eat." She looked exactly like someone who had been starving for hundreds of years. I was too scared to step forward. Kuahua then took the buns from my hand, a little embarrassed. "Brother Scamp, my mother has been sick for a long time and has been craving steamed buns for a long time. Now she finally gets to eat them, so she's very happy." With that, Kuahua handed the buns to her mother. Like a starving wolf, she snatched the buns, stuffed them straight into her mouth, not bothering to chew, and simply swallowed them whole. I saw her throat moving repeatedly. Before long, the black medicine patch fell off, revealing a chunk of unchewed bun. Kuahua's mother had not come back to life. Her neck was still torn open. That sight scared me to death. I just wanted to run away, but for some reason, my whole body felt like it was made of lead, unable to move. "Drink slowly, mother, you might choke." Kuahua seemed not to notice her abnormality. She brought a bowl of water and gave it to her mother to drink. Her mother tilted her head back, gulping down the buns while pouring water into her mouth. The water, however, seeped out from the wound in her throat, dripping onto the blood-soaked blanket. My legs trembled uncontrollably. Little Kuahua's eyes seemed blind. She still didn't see the change in her mother, only continuously patted her back. "Mother, mother, eat slowly." After saying this, Kuahua stood up and turned to me. "Brother Scamp, I'll take you to get tofu water." I followed Kuahua, and only then did I notice that she was completely soaked. Water dripped from her braids and clothes, and each step she took left a wet trail. I couldn't help but say, "Kuahua, what's wrong with you? Why are you so soaking wet? Aren't you cold?" Kuahua looked bewildered and replied, "There's nothing wrong with me, I'm not wet." I took her hand and forcefully twisted her sleeve. "Look, your whole body is covered in water. How did this happen?" Kiwihua looked blank. "Why is my body all wet? How did that happen?" I asked. "You don't even know where the water on your body came from." Kiwihua didn't say anything, her eyes slowly rolling upwards as if trying hard to think. Just a moment later, she suddenly shrieked and fell backward. "Kiwihua, what's wrong?" I tried to help her up, but she squirmed and writhed on the ground like an earthworm, yelling, "Why is my body all wet? Aha, why don't I know anything?" I saw Kiwihua acting as if she had gone mad, so I didn't dare touch her anymore. Just then, my grandmother's voice rang out from the yard. "Scamp, Scamp, where are you?" Grandfather roared. "Didn't I tell you to watch Scamp carefully? And here you are, sleeping like the dead, not caring about him at all." Grandmother protested. "Who knew where he ran off to?" I quickly replied. "Grandfather, Grandmother, I'm here." Soon after, Grandfather and Grandmother ran into Kiwihua's yard. Grandmother rushed over and hit me several times. It really hurt. "You little scamp, who told you to run around at midnight like this?" Grandmother hit me so hard, I quickly cried out. "Grandmother, Kiwihua came looking for me. She said she'd take me to get tofu. I thought I should quickly get the tofu and come back, so I followed her out." "For your greed," Grandmother continued hitting me. "Don't you know that Mrs. Liu's son wants to harm people? Even if you crave something, you shouldn't go out in the middle of the night." Grandmother hit me a few more times. My grandfather didn't stop her at all. Grandfather just looked at Kiwihua, who was writhing on the ground, and said, "Kiwihua, you're all wet. Why don't you go inside and change your clothes?" Kiwihua continued to writhe on the ground, yelling, "Why is my body all wet? Aha, why don't I know anything?" I said. "Grandfather, Kiwihua seems to have lost her memory. She doesn't know why she's wet." Grandfather didn't answer. He reached out and placed his hand on Kiwihua's neck. A few seconds later, his face turned pale green, looking extremely grim. I asked, "Grandfather, what's wrong with Kiwihua?" Grandfather didn't answer me but looked at Kiwihua and said, "Kiwihua, if you can't remember why you're wet, then so be it. What do you still want in your heart now? I'll have Scamp do it for you." Kiwihua finally stopped writhing. She wiped her face and said, "I promised Brother Scamp I'd give him tofu water to drink." My grandfather said, "Never mind the tofu water, we don't need it anymore. Do you want anything else?" Grandmother immediately cried out, "Why don't we need it? We even gave her buns already." My grandfather glared fiercely at her, and grandmother fell silent, not daring to say anything more. Kiwihua said, "I also want 2 more steamed buns for my mother to eat." "My mother has been sick for several days and has been craving steamed buns." My grandfather frowned. "Didn't your mother already die?" I quickly interjected. "Grandfather, a bald, scarred monk came and used herbal medicine to save her mother, but she looks very strange. Her neck has a hole in it, but she can still eat buns and drink water." My grandfather turned to grandmother and said, "Take Scamp home quickly. Don't let him out again tonight." Grandmother grabbed my arm and pulled me straight towards our house. Kiwihua called after me, "Brother Scamp, you haven't taken the tofu water yet." Grandfather waved his hand. "We don't need the tofu water anymore. Kiwihua, now, lead me to see your mother." Grandmother and I returned home. As soon as we entered the door, grandmother kicked me hard. It really hurt. "You little scamp, how dare you give delicious buns to others? It seems you've been eating too well lately." I was in pain and felt wronged. "Grandmother, you never said I couldn't give Kiwihua buns before." Grandmother hit me again. "Then why didn't you bring some tofu back from her house?" I said. "Grandfather told me not to take any tofu." Grandmother poked her finger at my forehead. "You listen to everything your grandfather says, so if your grandfather told you not to eat rice, you wouldn't eat it either." I felt even more aggrieved. No matter what I did, I got hit. After a while, grandfather returned. Grandmother asked, "How is Kiwihua's mother?" My grandfather came over to me and asked, "Is Scamp asleep yet?" Fearing grandmother would hit me again, I lay still on the bed and didn't answer. Grandmother softly huffed, "I just gave him a few slaps, he's asleep now." My grandfather sighed and said, "Little Kiwihua and her mother are both dead." Grandmother shivered. "What? They're both dead? I just saw Kiwihua alive and well." "What do you know?" My grandfather glared at her. "Although they are dead, their attachment to life is still too strong, so they themselves don't know they are dead." Grandmother asked, "Were they both harmed by Mrs. Liu's son?" My grandfather replied, "Kiwihua's mother was killed by Mrs. Liu's son, but Kiwihua wasn't. She probably fell into the water and drowned." Grandmother furrowed her brows. "No wonder I saw her soaking wet, and she had a strong fishy smell too." I couldn't bear it anymore. I sprang up to a sitting position. "Grandfather, I don't believe Kiwihua is dead." My grandfather knocked hard on my head. "You rascal, you startled me." I jumped up, intending to run outside. My grandfather grabbed my hand. "Where are you going?" I said. "I want to go up the mountain to find that herbal medicine the scarred head monk mentioned. I want to give it to Kiwahua to drink. I don't want her to die." My grandfather let go of my hand, his voice icy cold. "You dare to go out at night? Just wait to have your neck bitten off by Mrs. Liu's son?" As soon as my grandfather said that, I immediately froze on the spot. I stood rooted there, my heart filled with both fear and sorrow. Little Kiwahua was dead. How could she be dead? After a long while, I asked, "Grandfather, didn't you just go to Mrs. Liu's house? Didn't you chop down her son?" My grandfather grumbled. "He ran away. I couldn't find him." Thinking that he wasn't home but wandering around outside, I suddenly felt chilled to the bone. I took a few deep breaths and said, "Mrs. Liu's son only harms people at night, right? I'll go visit little Kiwahua again in the morning." My grandfather glanced at me. "When he's not fully formed, he indeed only dares to harm people at night. But once he's harmed 100 lives, he will no longer fear the sunlight." Grandmother worried, "So what should we do now?" My grandfather's voice was heavy, filled with resentment. What to do? Back then, I told Mrs. Liu to quickly bury her son, but she accused me of making up stories and even suspected me of having an affair with her. Grandmother pouted. "You blame me, but didn't you have some shady dealings with her yourself? Besides, I don't care. If Mrs. Liu's son harms people, it's not just harming me. If everyone's going to die, let the whole village die. I'm not afraid." My grandfather remained silent. He just picked up the ghost head blade from the table and strode out. Grandmother quickly asked, "Where are you going?" My grandfather replied, "To Mrs. Liu's house. I must hold her accountable. No matter what, I must eradicate this menace." That night, he never returned. The next morning, I was anxious and quickly ran to little Kiwahua's house. Inside, her mother's continuous hoarse groans echoed. "So hungry, I'm so hungry." Little Kiwahua held a large basin full of white rice. She tried to stuff the rice into her mother's mouth. "Mother, mother, eat a little more." But as soon as it was poured in, the rice immediately gushed out from the hole in her neck. Not a single grain made it down into her stomach. Her mother still wailed hoarsely, continuously crying out that she was hungry. When she saw me walk in, her eyes suddenly shone brightly, fixated on me. "Scamp, I'm so hungry. Can you help me?" Little Kiwahua immediately turned to look at me. "Brother Scamp, my mother is hungry. Will you help her?" Before I could refuse, her two rigid hands firmly pressed my head, pushing me closer to her mother's mouth. I struggled in panic, shouting, "Let go." Her strength was never equal to mine before, but now her hands were like iron, pressing me closer and closer. As the distance narrowed, I could smell the foul, bloody odor and a strong milky scent more clearly. I wailed and struggled. "Auntie, you're dead. Why do you still want to eat me?" Little Kiwahua's mother's eyes were wide open, her pupils cloudy white and bulging like a dead fish's. It was a terrifying sight. She growled, "Scamp, what did you say?" I burst into tears. "You're dead, you're hungry because your neck was bitten through. Food will never go down to your stomach." She let out a desolate cry, then her head snapped to the side. I heard a crack, and her entire head completely separated from her body. This time, she was truly dead, completely dead. "Mother!" Little Kiwahua let go of me, then threw herself onto her mother's corpse, wailing. It was only then that I realized they truly didn't know they were dead, but as soon as I spoke the reason for their deaths, the attachment in their hearts vanished and they died completely. Little Kiwahua wailed over her mother's body for a long time, then suddenly turned, her eyes burning with hatred, staring straight at me. "You killed my mother. I want you to pay with your life." I fled in terror, but little Kiwahua ran faster. She was about to reach out and grab me when she suddenly shrieked terribly. Her entire body seemed to have been splashed with boiling water. Hot bubbles began to appear on her skin. I was startled and quickly turned back to her. She fell writhing on the ground, spitting out mouthfuls of foul-smelling, reeking water. Yet, her eyes still looked at me with hatred, her hook-like hands trying to reach out and claw me. But as soon as they touched me, her hands bubbled even more violently. It was then that I realized it wasn't because she touched me that she transformed like this, but because the sunlight in the courtyard was shining directly on her. The scorching sun, hot like boiling water, poured onto her body, causing her skin to constantly bubble, crack, and disintegrate. "Little Kiwahua, are you in a lot of pain?" I clutched her hand, tears streaming down my face. "Your mother has eaten buns now. You can rest in peace." Little Kiwahua thrashed a few more times, then completely died. As soon as she stopped breathing, her corpse immediately flowed out a black, foul-smelling, putrid water. I sobbed uncontrollably, went into the house, and wrapped her body in a blanket. Poor little Kyuhyua. Her father died at her birth, and her mother raised her alone by selling tofu. Now her mother is dead, and she is gone too. Perhaps no one would even bother to dig a grave to bury her. My heart ached. I cried until I was choked. My cries echoed back to our house, and grandmother immediately roared, "Get back here immediately." I wiped away my tears and shuffled back. At night, grandmother had finished cooking. As usual, the whole family waited for grandfather to return before eating. Just then, a commotion erupted outside in the street. Grandmother quickly ran out to see, and I scampered after her. It turned out that something had happened at Widow Wang's house. She had given birth to 3 sons, all healthy, who often accompanied her to trade in town. She had always been proud of her fertility, boasting about her large backside, making it easy to bear children whenever she had the chance. But now, all 3 of her sons were dead. Widow Wang wailed pitifully, thrashing on her sons' bodies. "My sons, why did you die such a tragic death?" My grandmother, however, pouted and even smiled scornfully. HMPH, she always said our family would die out with no heirs. Well, now her own line is cut off first. Widow Wang continued to cry loudly, attracting a crowd. Being small, I squeezed through the legs of adults to get to the front. The moment I saw, a chill ran down my spine. The deaths of those 3 brothers were exactly like little Kyuhyua's mother. All had their throats bitten open. I trembled and shouted to grandmother. "Grandmother, it was Mrs. Liu's son." Grandmother finally looked closely, her expression changing several times, and quickly said, "Go home quickly. Wait for your grandfather to return." When grandmother and I returned home, we found that grandfather had already come back at some point. He hadn't touched the food on the table. Grandmother said, "Mrs. Liu's son has harmed people again. Old man, why haven't you managed to chop him down yet?" My grandfather's voice was heavy. "I cannot kill him." Grandmother asked, "What do we do now?" Grandmother sighed a few times. "If I had known, even if you went to find your old lover, I shouldn't have stopped you." My grandfather suddenly stood up. "He's about to be fully formed. We must leave here immediately." Grandmother quickly said, "Leaving in the middle of the night like this? Let me pack some things. Let's wait until morning to go." My grandfather grabbed my hand and pulled me out. "The zombie grows more ferocious by the day. If we don't go immediately, we won't be able to escape." Grandmother kept insisting on packing valuable belongings before leaving. My grandfather still dragged me straight out. We had just exited the village gate when grandmother's voice called from behind, "Wait for me a little." I told grandfather to stop, but he didn't turn around, only continued walking. I pulled away from grandfather's hand and ran towards grandmother. Grandmother's bound feet meant she couldn't walk fast. She only shuffled along slowly, step by step. But strangely, she ran for a long time without getting out of breath. I looked at her and asked, "Grandmother, aren't you carrying anything? Are you just going out like this?" Grandmother came closer. "Scamp, I'm a little tired. Carry me a little." With that, grandmother leaped onto my back. A sharp pain shot through my back, and I was forced to the ground. Immediately, grandmother opened her mouth and bit my neck. I struggled in panic, wailing and calling for grandfather. For some reason, grandfather reacted slowly. It took him a while to turn and look at me. Just when I thought I was saved, I noticed something was wrong. Why was grandfather's face so pale? "Let go of Scamp." Grandfather stepped closer. I struggled violently and inadvertently tore grandmother's face. The skin was as thin as ripe peach peel. With a slight pull, it peeled off easily. "Ah!" I screamed in terror. Beneath the skin was the face of Mrs. Liu's son. He was not grandmother, but the zombie. "Let go of Scamp." Grandfather roared and lunged, grabbing him. Mrs. Liu's son laughed in a grotesque, cackling way. "Uncle, you're dead too. Are you still trying to save your grandson?" My grandfather froze in place. I stared at him, my eyes wide with shock. My grandfather looked no different than usual, except for his pale face. Mrs. Liu's son continued, "You're dead, uncle. Your body was bitten in half by me." As he spoke, he threw open grandfather's robes. That sight became my lifelong nightmare. My grandfather's body was mangled and rot, a bloody mess, his internal organs clearly visible. As soon as he finished speaking, my grandfather's body began to collapse bit by bit and then rot. My grandfather looked at me, his last words, gasped in pain, "Run, quickly run." I wailed, wanting to embrace him, but my survival instinct made me turn and run for my life. The wind howled in my ears, and my heart ached with immense pain. I understood then, my grandfather was not a match for the zombie. He had been bitten to death. but because he worried about me, he persistently held on, pretending to be alive to lead me to escape. In the end, he was gone too. Grandmother was also gone. My strength slowly drained away. At that moment, I truly craved white steamed buns. If only I could eat them, I would regain my strength. The zombie quickly caught up, his voice somber. "Scamp, stop obediently. Let me taste you." I don't know if it was his words enchanting me or if I was simply exhausted, but my legs grew heavy. I could barely run anymore. He easily grabbed my neck. Just as I thought I was about to die, a bald monk in ragged gray robes suddenly appeared. He shouted loudly, "Zombie, how long will you continue to harm people?" The zombie saw the monk and was frightened. His trembling hand released me, and he turned and ran away. As for me, my neck was choked, my head dizzy, and I completely fainted. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in the mountains, next to the bald monk. He said, "I have helped you bury your family and chanted sutras for their salvation. Don't worry, they will soon be reborn as humans." I quickly knelt down. "Master, I am an orphan now. Please take me in and teach me." The monk sighed and replied, "Very well, it's over, it's all over."